And welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to GeekWatch, a subsidiary of the Monastery, the open bar of the internet. I am your one and only gaming monk, better known as Mildra, and with me I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 good brothers. Yes, 3 ain't enough, we need 5. That one was for you, Maddie. We have the king of memes, the man who drinks himself to sleep every Sunday during a Falcons game. And the man who is trying to take over the city of Atlanta with his hee-ho army, good brother Akira. We have the recovering Cowboys fan and the man who had to check himself into therapy for laughing at the Leafs so much it broke his hip, good brother Cure. We have the living stack of comics and the man who outdrinks everyone under the table, even Bacchus himself. Yes, he outdrinks the god of drinking. Good brother Doku. We have the man who is guiding you through your VTubers and taking over your anime with a pair of hot-blooded sunglasses. Good brother Shades. And we have the CEO of Zadara Enterprises, the man of 1,000 runes, and the man who makes it his life's mission to be the bane of my fucking existence. Good brother Zatrix.
One of us has to do it. It's a thankless job.
What are you, the repo man?
Oh,
it's just as rewarding as repossession, so yes.
I don't think you obviously don't know what repo man he was referring to.
Oh no, it's a thankless job, but somebody's got to do it. I'll take your spine next time.
That would imply I have one.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Self-burned. Ouch. I don't think
who better to burn me than myself, motherfucker?
Darwin Award much? Social Darwin Award, at least.
I'm not sure if that's a drink or if I should just kind of hang my head.
Both.
Stop bullshitting me, Doku. You're drinking anyways.
Right, it is a drink, so cheers. Also, don't bring up Bacchus' name. He's still looking for that bottle of Blue Lotus wine.
Look, that was the first thing that came to mind whenever I think of gods who are drinking. I was either going to go with that or the god of hangovers, who probably hates you.
I mean, one doesn't get his penance, and the other is missing a bottle of Blue Lotus wine. I have no idea what happened to either. It's not my fault.
Exactly. You were hanging out with Dionysus, who likes to steal from Bacchus all the time.
It's definitely her fault.
His.
Also,
Is her,
Rick,
she, them, who cares?
Also, Rick, who in the fuck do you think we're referring to? Then again, he's probably thinking of a different repo.
Mm-hmm. Look, if you're thinking I was referring to one of the worst gimmicks of 90s WWF, then put your motherfucking head back down.
If please.
That'll be a drink right there.
Yeah.
But given how last time we ended up doing a character creation thing, this week it's time for us to go full fucking weeb again.
We're in my territory now, bitches.
So now I will. So I think it's fair to say that for several generations, their gateway drug into the world of weebery was the Toonami block, whether it be in the very early days when it kind of grew as an offshoot from the resurrection of one of the lamest Hanna-Barbera superheroes with Space Ghost, or because whenever I think of Space Ghost and then think of Cartoon Planet, the two of them kind of blend together in my head.
When most people think of Space Ghost, they're thinking Coast to Coast.
Space Ghost is a good show, and I don't care what anyone says.
No, you're getting no argument from me.
I remember coming across a couple episodes of the original Space Ghost, and it's not bad, but it's really blah.
It's a product of its time.
Yes.
You clearly never saw the episode with Bizarro Santa from the Electroid Dimension.
It's the thing about Hanna-Barbera is during the 60s they were the animation studio when it came to television, but and for a good amount during the 70s as well. But by the time the 80s rolled around, a lot of their tricks had gotten way overused. The biggest example is the tie neck.
So, the 80s is also where the House of Mouse started to rear its ugly head even further.
I'd say there's certainly that, but I'd say the other factor is that everybody had kind of caught on how copy paste Hanna-Barbera had gotten. Same thing happened with Filmation.
Yeah, and I guess my point is that Disney followed the old adage by Sun Tzu: never interrupt when your enemy is making a mistake.
Mm-hmm.
And then when the weakness showed, they struck.
Yeah.
Well, not everything could be Scooby-Doo in the Ghoul School, so.
Well, that's the. It's funny. I often hear people talk about how great animation was in the 80s, and a lot of people have rose-tinted glasses, because as John Wick had once said, we cast our memories in a romantic light, and all us husbands know shadows do a great job of hiding love handles. Because I ended up doing a binge of just random shows that came and went during the 80s. 90% of it can be summarized as either Scooby-Doo ripoff or Flintstones ripoff, especially. And some of it was just pain to sit through. Like, I sat through 2 episodes of the Rubik cartoon.
His boy Elroy, daughter Judy, Jane, his wife. Okay, that's enough of that.
I mean, the Jetsons are a direct future sci-fi copy paste of the Flintstones.
Yeah.
To the point where they were able to make a crossover between the two, and it was fit like 2 perfect puzzle pieces.
Yeah. But of course, when it comes to Toonami, it's a show that's gone through many eras over the years. But given how a lot of the repertoire in the early days of Cartoon Network was just a means to show the massive library that the Turner Company had at that time. There's the early days when they were using what were effectively D-list villains as the host. And I think that only lasted for a year before they started to really start diving in with 90s CG.
A year and a half to 2. Yeah. Let's see. It was from March of '97 to July of '99. So it was almost 2 years.
For 2 years.
Yeah.
I didn't realize it lasted that long.
Mm-hmm.
Huh.
For whatever reason, I was thinking it only lasted a year. So I was technically half right. But then they decided to scrap that with the soft reboot and go full SF with the Toonami Operations Machine, I believe it was, or as we know him, Tom.
Who, as most people seem to forget, was first voiced by Krillin before he became voiced by Spike.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. But we'll get to that. We'll get to that. We if we're going to start talking about Toonami's past, we have to start from the very beginning in that early 2 years, the Moltar era.
Yeah.
The Moltar era of Toonami.
Now,
Before we
dark
even
time.
begin this, I just want to say, I feel really fucking old.
Yeah.
Shut up!
To give you an idea of how different it was from what we know Toonami today, the very first set of shows that Toonami aired back in 1997, there was not a single anime amongst them. There was one. There was one. You had Thundercats, and remember, this was way before. This was the original Thundercats. The Real Adventures of Johnny Quest. The only anime was Voltron, and, you calling that an anime would be a misnomer considering how it was adapted in America. And a cartoon roulette of classic Hanna-Barbera shows, including the aforementioned Space Ghost, Birdman and the Galaxy Trio, the Herculoids, Mytor, Shazam, not to be confused with Shazam, Teen Force, The Impossibles, and of all
40s
things,
Superman cartoons.
the 1940 Superman cartoons.
Mm-hmm. like I said, a lot of Cartoon Network in its early days was a glorified dumping ground of a station of many that Turner had in its library. It's like, well, Turner had acquired the library of cartoons that Hanna-Barbera had put out for the last 30 years at that point, so they figured just put them all on this one area.
Yep.
If I remember correctly, wasn't Blast from the Past one of their early slogans?
Something like that.
I'm pretty sure it was.
Yeah.
Again, I
Wouldn't
feel
be
old.
surprising, but and the constant need for them to say, "Here, send us your feedback so we can make Toonami a better show for you."
Didn't He-Man
God.
part of that original lineup too?
No, He-Man was not. Actually, the thing is, the only He-Man that ever showed up wasn't until way later, and it was the reboot of He-Man.
Which
They never showed the original.
I would love to talk about that particular reboot one of these days, but I feel like that deserves its own episode.
Yeah.
I didn't mind it. I liked it.
Well, we'll get to that. We'll get to that another day. But yeah. But it wasn't until a year later that they really started to lean in on the anime stuff. With on top of adding the Super Friends and Beast Wars of all things in '98, they added 3 big anime titles: Sailor Moon, Robotech, which there's another show you could do a whole episode on.
Also, fuck you, Harmony Gold.
Fuck you,
I
Harmony
would've-
Gold.
Not to say the same thing.
And the show that basically turned Toonami into a household name and is the reason we can't get the fuck rid of it, Dragon Ball Z.
Mm-hmm.
Also, let's just point out one thing real quick. Every time I hear the show, or every time I hear the term reboot, it makes me think of the show Reboot, the first animated series that popularized CGI out of a Canadian studio.
Funny enough, that also aired in 1999 on Toonami.
Oh, there you go.
But so with the 1998 era bringing in possibly the 2 most known names in anime in the West to this day, Sailor Moon and Dragon Ball Z. And then Robotech, which was the unholy, hellish fucking Frankenstein of Macross, Mospita, and Northern Cross.
Mm-hmm.
Wait. Aren't we forgetting Gundam Wing?
Gundam Wing's way later.
Yeah,
That's later.
We'll get to that.
We'll
But-
get there.
I think, but I've always now. I will admit that if I ever get the opportunity to speak with anybody who was responsible for those early years, I would love to do an interview on that. It's just a matter of being able to find someone and whether or not they're under NDA to talk about that era. Look, I'm trying to delude myself into thinking I'm a journalist. So
Don't compare yourself with those piles of garbage. You're better. You're better than that, Monk.
But Are you saying that I could go I could go to a Kotaku writer and make it and cut an MJF promo?
Never know until you try.
Oh.
I mean, you'll probably pull it off, but still.
But when it comes to I think I kind of have the feeling that that Toei slash Shueisha slash whoever handled the Japanese end of things didn't really have a whole lot of faith in this whole channel thing to begin with. Largely because I feel like around that era, that was when those particular those particular anime were making large splashes in the tape trading scene. Another one obviously that was making a big splash in the tape trading scene in that era was Ranma 1/2.
Yeah.
And I think that somebody just saw that was happening, especially in the early days of conventions, and decided to jump on it. But what I do find interesting is that aside from while they would end up getting more anime, a good chunk of the anime they got in that first wave had, as I mentioned when we did the Char episode, baggage.
Yeah.
Yeah, Dragon Ball Z was still in the Ocean dub era. It had Funimation it was still using the Ocean Group for their dub at the time. They hadn't fully gone in house yet. And Sailor Moon, of course, was also the dub done by Deke.
Yeah.
And
I remember sitting through some of those Deke dubs, and well, I will credit the voice cast. I have the same attitude about Deke / Nelvana that I did about 4Kids, where I credit the voice cast, and I wish nothing but pain and suffering for the writing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've mentioned before in the past that my introduction to anime was actually in the tape trading scene, watching bootleg, untranslated Japanese Sailor Moon VHSs.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't know anything about what was going on in the show. It was pretty and sounded cool. I was happy to watch it as a tiny child. When I saw the Sailor Moon dub on Toonami, I was like, what is this shit? Because at that point I'd had time to, in the very early nascent internet, find some of the plot synopses for the VHS I had loved so much. And what was happening on Cartoon Network was not the plot synopses I had found.
Yeah, to give you an idea of how how unconfident most of these companies were with Toonami, the next year the only anime added to the lineup was Ronin Warriors,
Which
the only
I will admit I have had a soft spot for that particular series for a long time.
Oh, absolutely.
Ronin Warriors and Saint Seiya / Knights of the Zodiac, both really good shows.
Well, yes. I'm not gonna argue that. I thought you were gonna say something else there. But yeah, the only other two shows that were added in 1999 were the aforementioned Reboot and the Powerpuff Girls. Take that as you will.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah, I remember when PPG was on Toonami for that short time.
But then, because 1998 and 1999 had a chance to actually establish anime as some sort of household name, and ratings shot through the roof around those shows, the year 2000 was the holy mecca of anime for Toonami.
Well, it was around this time, and I'm sure Monk was probably going to lean into this, so I apologize for kind of stealing your spotlight here, but this is my turf. But it was in 1999 where Toonami underwent a drastic change to begin with, because in July 10th, 1999, Toonami had been relaunched with a brand new environment and a whole new setup, and this was when we got our first introduction to Tom. This was Tom 1, voiced by Sonny Strait, aka Krillin, as we mentioned earlier.
Mm-hmm.
And you see Tom, everyone who knows Toonami now knows what Tom looks like. Big, somewhat decent average sized robot, very humanoid looking, very slim, very sleek. And then you look at Tom 1. Bomberman called, he'll see you in court.
George, little guy, ain't he?
The fat boy with whose entire stomach was a nuclear reactor.
Yeah, again, take away the nuclear reactor, Bomberman will see you in court.
Yeah, and I do recall reading reports that some of them I was able to recover, because obviously trying to get discussion posts from 21 years ago is easier said than done. That particular design was savaged. But it was around this time that you had the first lineup for what a lot of people associate with it, and also the first signs that they were starting to branch out with the branding of this action dedicated block, because you had first off, you had the after school block, and then you had the late night block where they aired stuff uncut, known as the Midnight Run.
Yeah,
and I believe there was one other block on Sunday
Saturday mornings.
Yeah, Saturday mornings, which was the Rising Sun.
Yeah, I think that came a little bit later.
Mm-hmm.
And here's where you really start seeing the anime influence start to creep in.
Mm-hmm.
You had a couple American shows because you had the Batman and Superman animated series, but you also had G-Force, which I honestly do not remember G-Force ever being on Toonami. That must have been during that Rising Sun block, because I missed that.
Yeah, Gotcha Man. I remember watching it on Saturday. But I'd like to point out that 2000 was the year of Tenchi!
Tenchi! Oh, yeah! The Tenchi runs, because this was the year we had the original Tenchi Muyo Ryo-Oki, Tenchi Universe, and then Tenchi in Tokyo all in the same year.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
And something also to point out. Sorry, go ahead.
Blue Submarine number 6, another. Both G-Force, which is an adaptation of Gotcha Man, and Blue Sub 6 are very niche anime, even comparatively in certain parts of Japan at that time, because of their age.
Yeah.
I still love Blue Sub 6, and I have all 4 episodes on DVD. I'm not getting rid of them.
Blue Sub 6 was something like that. It's again a narrative that I've been kind of building for this is that I think during those early years, I suspect that there was a lack of general oversight, because you look at a lot of the stuff that they got, and some of it you can kind of understand with the identity that they were trying to develop. But there were others that were just completely haphazard and Whiskey Tango Foxtrot. And as much as I like Blue Submarine number 6, there's the obvious question of why would you acquire broadcasting rights for something so damn short?
Yeah, even at the time I was like, it's only 4 episodes? What the fuck?
Well, not even that it was short. It was not a show that normally would have been geared towards children by Western standards at the time.
Yeah. However,
I think what it was, if I had to make an estimation, was they were acquiring just about anything they thought would stick that was cheap enough.
Yeah, that's the thing. It was cheap enough. However, we are also ignoring the elephant in the room, because another show came out during the year 2000 that was another show that pretty much changed the game. And that, of course, was Mobile Report Gundam Wing.
Now, of course, this is the second time we've discussed Gundam, and This is also why I wanted to bring up the Midnight Run.
Where all the Gundam shows played.
Yeah,
Well,
though Gundam Wing did play during the main run as well.
Yeah, but for a lot of people, there was the appeal of watching it on the uncut end of things, because if I recall correctly, the FCC has certain rules that they're willing to be a little bit more lax on their standards if you're playing things at the ass end of the night.
Yeah, I think it's after like 9-10 o'clock p.m. They tend to be a little more lax on what you can air.
I remember for a few years, Comedy Central had this thing called Secret Stash, where they would show certain old roasts or stand-up routines, completely uncut at like midnight Central.
Midnight, 1 a.m., stuff like that. I remember seeing some of those.
Mm-hmm.
And Midnight Run was my only interaction with Toonami at this point. The area I lived in, my school was 10 miles away from my house, and there were 20 stops between my school and my house. And then I'd have to walk a quarter mile uphill to get to my house.
Mm-hmm.
So by the time I got home, it was 5 p.m. Toonami's over. I could only do the Midnight Run, which of course led to some interesting days ahead for me when I was going to school with 4 hours of sleep a day.
Yeah.
And also, a gamer fan, somebody in the chat could probably correct me if I'm wrong. I believe in the early days of Toonami, when Sailor Moon was airing around the same time as Reboot, I believe it was the second show to air. I think Reboot came first, then it was Sailor Moon. Then I think at that time, I think it was Herculoids. Yeah. And then we hit DBZ, Gundam Wing, and then later something else got replaced by Outlaw Star.
Now,
Sailor Moon
Game Fan did ask when S aired. That wouldn't be for a while because if I recall correctly, Deke only handled the first 2 series when it came to Sailor Moon. Super S, and Super S, they had no involvement with. That was Pioneer.
Pioneer and Cloverway were the companies that handled S and Super S, and yet neither of them touched Stars because they had some semblance of common sense there.
When it comes to Stars, I've had two. There's been 2 approaches that I've taken with it, because a lot of people because I end up sitting through a fan sub of Stars in its entirety, and I am well aware that there's some controversy because Stars made a lot of changes compared to the manga, and some of those Takeuchi was not exactly cool with. But the whole thing with the Stars is one point of contention. I'd say another one is the fact that Stars used way too much Japanese humor. I say this because almost every single episode had like a 5-second card from the fan subbers explaining a joke that was in that episode that would not translate in English.
Yeah, exactly.
You know how up until it happened, a lot of people were dead set certain that Shinkenger would never get adapted in the States, simply because of how outright Japanese it is, and how I've joked that and maybe I'm wrong on this because I've been proven wrong before this week, that Zetsubo Sensei would never get a dub because of the same problem.
Yeah, no, Zetsubo Sensei still has never gotten a dub. So yeah, you're right on that one.
Yeah,
and yeah, that's definitely the reason.
Zetsubo Sensei, for anybody who hasn't heard us talk about it before, literally everybody's name is a pun or joke or some sort of reference.
Every name is a double meaning. And
yes,
it can get crazy with the way they set that up. So yeah, there's no way they could dub it properly.
And that being said, that is once again why Japanese wordplay is my favorite form of wordplay in the world, because goddamn, literally everything can become a joke somehow.
Yeah. Now, believe it or not, though, the Tom 1 era was actually rather short because it lasted about a year into 2000, and then we get to a moment that made Toonami, in and of itself, take away all the shows that aired and everything else. This one moment changed Toonami and people's perception of it forever, and that was its total immersion events, or ties. And its very first one set the standard with The Intruder.
And
I remember that.
I remember the massive amount of hype they were putting into this. I was seeing aside from seeing ads all over the place on TV, I was seeing ads for The Intruder in several gaming magazines that I was reading around that time, because in the early 2000s, one could say I was laying the groundwork for my wannabe journalism, because I was frequently reading like 4 or 5 different gaming magazines at that time. Which, given the state of gaming magazines a few years later, that might seem a little bit ridiculous, but even in my younger days, I was an information addict.
Yeah, but yeah.
Well, remember at that time they also released a video game to go along with this event.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's why it was called a total immersion event, is because it was several things. The two biggest things it was it was a little mini-series arc that aired at the beginning of the Toonami block, but there was also mobile games that were actually part of the storyline. Like, you would have to play the games to see more, to understand more of what the story was doing.
Mm-hmm.
But this tie-in event, the first tie, introduced two big things. The first was the fact that the ship that they piloted, the Absolution, was actually controlled by an AI system known as Sarah.
Yep.
That was first introduced in the tie. And then, as part of the tie-in event, the original Tom was literally destroyed. They killed him off. Just outright killed him off. Which, I get the feeling that whole Bomberman comparison might have actually been something they realized, we might want to fix that. And because of all the savagery that they were getting, as we mentioned earlier, they probably realized that, yeah, we probably could do better. Mm-hmm. And thus we were introduced to Tom 2.
I will admit, I still kind of miss trying to find those heavy resource bots so you could get the certain cards and certain levels.
Yeah.
And yes, I'm old. I know.
Dude, I feel you. But yeah, Tom 2 was introduced, and that was when the game changed.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Also, something important that we should point out, right around this time is also the same point in time where you could walk into a Sun Coast and roughly 1/3 to 1/4 of the store was dedicated to anime. And it's also the same time where the term Japanimation was starting to become a household thing. And yes, you did see a large influence of Japanese culture and that becoming more popularized in the West, to the point where 1 out of every 5 people actually knew that Vegeta was a joke for vegetable, which is why he kept getting shoved in the ground and then yanked up by his hair.
Yeah, and speaking of Dragon Ball, because one of the key things was that in the early days, the ties were also coming out pretty much designed to come out in conjunction with the newest season of Dragon Ball Z. Like, this was the time when they finally finished the Frieza arc.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And all of this tied together created... I don't know what the official name for this particular series of events that led to such popularization of Japanese culture in America would have been called at the time. I personally, at the time, called it the Japanese Renaissance. And this as Doku already pointed out, led to a lot of different household in-jokes and names occurring, and also led to the biggest influx of sister cities between Japan and America ever seen.
Yeah.
Cities that were dedicated to each other across the Pacific Ocean.
This was the beginning of the first anime boom.
Yeah.
Well, it's kind of a melting pot point in time where, you know, everything became viable to the point of not only can we make money at this, but it's actually popular and it's actually growing. And now you're starting to see people give it attention.
The other thing that I feel there was a kind of conjunction of events, because in addition to this, around those early 2000s, you started to have you began to see the gradual transition away from VHS and onto DVD as the popular format. I distinctly remember the experience of seeing VHSs at one point dominating the shelves of my local stores, and then slowly shifting away over to DVD, and even the conversation about what the hell DivX is, if any.
Yeah.
Oh God.
The city I grew up in was a sister city with a Japanese city prior to this large boom. I remember when the delegations that would come over from Japan for their 10-day stay, whether it was the middle school students or the adults for their delegations, every other year they'd come over. And when this boom happened, they noticed it. Because all of a sudden, when it came to the middle school students coming over, they all of a sudden were watching kids watching shows that they watch at home, and they didn't understand it. The adults understood it because they understood that one of our major television corporations was actually introducing anime at a widespread rate across broadcast television. And as the years went on, it only tied our cities closer together. At this point, I believe my hometown has probably got one of the strongest cultural exchange programs with Japan. And it's a small town. It's a very small place of no more than 30,000 people that I'm from.
It's a town so small Bob Seger wrote a song about it.
Probably true, actually.
But
And that's a drink. That is a drink.
Now, with the when it came to this particular era, when it came to the thing about the intruder is, unfortunately, this is an instance of a sweet rifle, because they would try the total immersion events with an affiliated sweepstake as a tie-in three more times. The first one was almost a year to the day later in 2001, which was Lockdown, and I don't remember that much of a marketing blitz for Lockdown, and when it came to the story, it was ultimately pointless.
Yeah.
Then in 2002 they tried this again with Trapped in Hyperspace, which was slightly better, but you're starting to see the problem of trying to make lightning strike twice with the effect that the intruder had.
Yeah.
And
not to mention that in those 2 years, in 2001 and 2002, we saw the Cartoon Network shows become an extremely marked, almost completely gone minority at this point. For 2001, the only Cartoon Network cartoon introduced was Batman Beyond, and it can be argued that Batman Beyond's art style is heavily influenced by anime.
Yeah. Though, to be fair, yeah, 2001 was probably, like, that's when they really went all in on the anime thing, because, again, we mentioned Outlaw Star, Card Captors came out.
The Big O was saved outright by being on Toonami.
So
it only had a half.
Bebop.
No, actually, Monk, I got to fight you on that, because Cowboy Bebop, at least in the original era, never aired on the original Toonami.
Yes, Cowboy Bebop didn't start airing on Toonami until the Adult Swim era.
Although
Cowboy Bebop was in.
I will rescind to that, but I will maintain what I said before, that a lot of the shows that ended up making a big splash in the States were ones that had had a degree of baggage in Japan.
Yes.
Yeah, no, absolutely. That we're not arguing. But now, to be fair, 2002, like 2001, and also we should mention the original Dragon Ball, because Mr. Yes brought that up in the chat. Yeah, the original Dragon Ball aired in 2001. Still very heavily censored, and then again, considering some of the content in the original Dragon Ball, it kind of needed to be.
Yeah.
Oh, look at that, a fish full of dollars. Still remember that line.
I'm talking about 2001 and 2002 combined. Yes, in 2002 there were more Cartoon Network cartoons seen. But the big one that I think the huge success story for Toonami at this time was the Big O, because the Big O only had essentially half a series. It came to a certain point, and in Japan it was essentially so unpopular, or at least not very high in the rating, that it was seen as too much of a cost to continue. And then it comes to the US on Toonami, which single-handedly shows that there's so much interest for it over here that they go, we could make money on this over there, but they're going to be the ones making that money. Yeah, well, we could still make a little bit of money off this. And
that kind of ties into something I wanted to bring up, which is that was when we had a brief push around that era, and this ties into the fourth tie of co-production with Japan. Because you had that, and then this brings me to the project that they did in 2003, which was IGPX, the Immortal Grand Prix.
We're kind of getting ahead because there's one anime in between that sticks out like a sore fucking thumb. And it to this day has been the bane of my existence when it comes to Toonami's original run.
Yeah,
because 2002 had a good amount of shows, a good mix of new anime, and American cartoons. You had, for the American shows, you had the He-Man reboot, Transformers. Well, Transformers Armada is kind of a mix of both, really. G.I. Joe and the original run of Samurai Jack,
which I will argue is an anime. Fuck you, fight me.
You know what? I'm actually not going to fight you on that one.
Exactly.
People had that same argument with Ruby and Avatar.
Yeah, exactly. Samurai Jack did that whole "is it really an anime" thing long before those shows did. But
exactly.
Anime wise, you had some of its like some of my personal favorites in the forms of Zoid's Chaotic Sentry, and yes, Mobile Fighter G Gundam. My personal favorite Gundam. Fuck you, fight me.
G Gundam's great, and G Gundam, for anybody who doesn't get it, G Gundam is a kung fu movie in giant robots. That's it.
Yes.
It's a fucking wuxia in giant robots.
Yes.
That's all you're watching.
Oh wait, the Mess Team is still better.
And which one, Jackie Chan?
I say Sai counts as the Jackie Chan.
Yeah, I'd say Sai. Though you can make an argument for Chibbity.
Chibbity's too American.
Well, he's also very over the top, which is also Jackie Chan. Anyway, that being said, that brings me to the elephant in the room I was mentioning a minute ago, because amongst all of those other awesome shows and action-packed, exciting events, there was this one anime that just didn't belong there. And that would be a little show.
Yeah. I know what you're about to say.
Yeah, you probably do, because I'm talking about a little anime known simply as Hamtaro.
I love hamsters.
Oh my God! Why the fuck did they try to put that on her? Were they high or something?
Yep, I'm gonna go ahead and I'm just gonna go ahead and drink to that one.
The story.
I'm joining you on that one, Doku. I'm joining you.
Yeah.
No, all right, Doku. I'm joining you on that. Here's the thing. I'm not against Hamtaro being on Cartoon Network. In fact, when they took it off the Toonami block and started airing in like early mornings, I was okay with that. I was like, okay, yeah, fine. The only fucking reason it was on Toonami was it was an anime.
Yeah, Toonami was filming their hodgepodge anime covers.
Something.
All right, when you're going to hear me say that Adventures of the Mini Goddess, the spinoff of Oh My Goddess, had a better place during that block than Hamtaro, you know there's something a little amiss.
Wait, that show was never on Toonami.
It wasn't, but I'm saying it should have been by comparison.
Okay, fair argument.
Yeah.
Yeah, hypothetical thing.
Yeah.
But even with the thing is, even I could see airing one episode as an April Fool's joke because, let's be honest, we would see even crazier April Fool's jokes in around that time and in the years since.
Mhm.
Yeah, especially the April Fool's joke we'll get to later that caused a part of the revival.
Oh yeah,
Well, and
you know
since
we're covering that shit.
since we're at this point, I had thought about this as we have gone through our discussion, specifically in regards to the tie-in events. So, just a brief, consider it an intermission, because I have a question for all of you.
Okay.
Can we actually blame Toonami for the popularity of gacha games that we see currently?
No,
Oh
no.
my god.
No. No.
I don't know. The tie-in event feels like a gacha game.
I ought to damn you for even considering that, you motherfucker.
It feels like the framework for a gacha game when you look back on it in retrospect.
No.
You aren't getting any tangible benefits if you don't win the sweepstake. At least for the gacha, you're getting something from the gacha, no matter whether you're one player or 10 million.
That's why I say framework.
Hey, who do we put in the corner?
Doku, you may not have been late this episode, but you're sure as hell being gay right now.
But
I regret nothing about asking this question.
Yeah. Now, that being said, after this point, things kind of settled into a groove. Like at this point, the tie-in events were coming out on a somewhat regular basis, and things were running along smoothly. The only big change was that in 2003, out of nowhere, Tom gets an upgrade. And it's not even a massive upgrade, which is why I didn't even bother putting him on the splash screen, because they just kind of bulked him up a little bit.
yeah.
So, but at that point, not much had changed until partway at around until about 2004, where suddenly
There was one thing in 2003 that you forgot to mention, a thing very close to mine and Monk's heart, a thing that was the best thing in February fucking ever, Giant Robot Week, motherfucker!
oh yeah,
Neon Genesis Evangelion, Gigantor, Robotech, Nadesco, and Dygard. Nadesco and Dygard had never been heard by anything but weebs like those of us who had already been into Super Robot Wars.
Yeah.
fair point. I forgot about that. Yeah, I apologize.
One thing that, and of course, some of the stuff that, something like Giant Robot Week felt like a dry run, and I do want to highlight something about this era. I have in the past spoken very fondly about the anime scene from the early 2000s. And it's not me saying that just out of rose-tinted glasses, because anybody can do that. You know that if I'm doing this, there's a method to the madness. The reason why I have a fondness for that particular era is because of the fact that you had a lot more competition about. Since
Yeah.
you really had three major companies involved when it came to dubbing. You had my personal favorite from this era, AD Vision, or just ADV Films, who spearheaded something that's a whole other topic for another day, the Anime Network, as well as the short-lived Western attempt at New Type magazine. You had Pioneer, who would later retitle themselves as Geneon, and you had I believe the third one was Viz. Now,
No, actually, Funimation was actually
Funimation was certainly around during this era, but it wouldn't be for a few years, and it wouldn't really until they were owned by Navarre that they would really start to expand their footprint.
which they had started to do around this time, but it was still slow going.
In the early 2000s, they were just known as the company that was doing distribution stuff for 4Kids, and even in the early 2000s, 4Kids still had the stink on them.
Yeah. And I'd also like to note that around 2003 is also the point where it looked like Cartoon Network was starting to branch further. The focus for Toonami was still very action-oriented shows, yes, but instead of getting action-oriented shows whose let's be honest, stories are pretty straightforward, the Sailor Moon and Dragon Ball Z's English adaptations notwithstanding, it was this change to all of these very deep stories. Dot Hack Sign, Yu Yu Hakusho, Rurouni Kenshin, Cyborg 009, for fuck's sake.
Yeah.
Man, who remembers the story of Cyborg 009? Because I sure fucking don't. That goddamn knot.
I do.
Unless you're...
That's simply because I'm a fucking historian.
Yeah.
No, I'm being facetious. I do remember. It's just the way that it was presented across Toonami was not the best for its story.
Yeah. But a lot of that also happened in the Tom 2 era. But with Tom 3 era, the big thing is something that Monk was bringing up earlier, IGPX.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Which that wasn't a rescue job like, say, season 2 of Big O. That was a full-on, complete collaboration with a Japanese studio.
Yeah, that was Toonami making their own, helping to make their own original show. And it did pretty good for itself. It got several seasons on it, and it was a nice test for what we're starting to see more and more in the modern era, with a lot of shows that Toonami is actually helping co-produce.
Mm-hmm. Well,
but the big,
remember that IGPX initially was a five installment five set of shorts, and then in 2005 was when it went full television series.
Yeah, exactly. That's thank you. But the big change that happened during the Tom 3 era was in 2004. When, out of the blue, Toonami started moving from being a weekday afternoon block to a Saturday evening block.
While at the same time, having shared material with the Kids WB block. In fact, I was never around for it, but I only know about it because of when Good Brother JT had talked about it. There was a brief time in sometime in the 2000s where Toonami made an appearance on the Kids WB block for.
This was in 2001 to 2002.
Yeah,
for about a year. The problem was that really it was just Toonami in name only.
Yeah, it was Kids WB's lineup with the Toonami name slapped on it.
I obviously I wasn't able to comment on that because I didn't see it. I didn't know about it until JT had told me.
Yeah, it had the shows that were on it were shows like it had a couple of Toonami shows, but it also had Scooby-Doo, Generation O, and a Goosebumps series created by R.L. Stine, The Nightmare Room. So it's like it did not fit on Toonami per se.
Which is probably why nobody talks about that particular era.
Yeah, it was panned hard. It was very much it was railed on. Mm-hmm. But yeah, the Saturday evening block era came on later. And to be fair, Cartoon Network didn't completely ignore their anime fans per se, because they did replace Toonami on weekdays with the block known as Maguzi. And while it didn't exactly have anime on it, it had a couple of decent action shows. It had Powerpuff Girls and a couple of shows. Yeah. And it also introduced the world to Code Lyoko, which I'm not complaining about.
No.
That French anime is so good.
Yeah.
French anime.
But the Saturday block, it had a few decent shows. I mean, it had Naruto. It introduced Naruto, Duel Masters, Gundam Seed, One Piece, though it was the 4-Kids version, so fuck that. Zatch Bell, and it also introduced me personally to one of the shows I now hate with an absolute dying passion of a million suns. Yeah, you know where I'm going with this one, Coops.
Yeah.
Because it introduced the world to Bobobo, Bobobo.
Bobo.
I remember.
I love Bobo.
Now, here's
Xana. Oh, hold on, real quick, Monk. Xana, you and I can't be friends.
You know what? That's fine. I'm enemies with the monk, and he's still one of my best friends. I'll be enemies with you, and you'll still be one of my best friends. It is a fate you cannot escape.
I will die on this hill. Bobobo is garbage.
Hey, there's such a thing as a guilty pleasure. Fuck off.
Look,
I'm not denying that it's garbage.
hang on. Look, I've made it clear that one of my guilty pleasure anime is Vice Kreutz. So I am in no room to judge. But even so, I remember when I found out that particular anime was getting adapted, and I will note one thing. As I mentioned before, I have the full run of New Type USA, and in the first year of that particular magazine, one thing that they would do is do episode synopses of anime that were airing in Japan at the time, and Bobobo was one of them. And the thing is, it was basically a spoiler for shows that were still airing in the States as well, because that's how I found out about certain plot synopses when it came to episodes of Yu-Gi-Oh. In a weird way, it ended up becoming The Observer but for weebs. But I remember looking at it and laughing at the name, and then I saw that, wait, that's going on the block. That's weird. Then I saw it and I'm like, this feels like a poor man's Excel Saga, and that's exactly what I called it.
Exactly. That's why it's a guilty pleasure. I love Excel Saga. I love Bobobo.
No, I like Excel Saga. I will defend Excel Saga any day of the week, and I don't think I have to because everyone knows that's a good damn parody series.
Although
I will murder. I will. Anyone says that they will die on the hill of Bobobo. Fine, I'll be glad to stick the knife in you.
Again, like I said, I'm not saying it's good. I just enjoy it. Fuck yourself.
That being said, if there's any when something else that we haven't really covered that I think deserves some bit of mention is in this time frame that we're going through. Eventually, they would branch out in other means, and one of those was doing brief reviews of games, or in some cases doing movie nights.
Oh yeah,
and when it comes to the games, I'd actually say the games was where they're really able to show the personalities of both Tom and Sarah, given their particular game preferences.
Yeah, there were a couple things actually besides the game reviews, which were really good, and I wouldn't call them the most fair reviews. I think they were pretty biased a lot of the times. Some of the scores just seemed a little like, huh, really?
First off, I think both of us can state from experience that using point score systems is pointless.
Yeah.
But the one that I'll always remember is when Tom reviewed a little known PS2 game called Dropship, and it was the only review that I could think of where there was a full-on rage quit.
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah, but there wasn't just the game reviews. A couple of the things that we did forget to mention, and I want to bring up the movie block again real quick after this, because there is something else that someone in the chat game fan brought up. But there was also the inspirational videos where they would have like the big life lesson sayings and teach morals, but they did it in a way that was actually more enjoyable and less forced, which I thought was really good. And they used clips from different anime and different shows on Toonami to kind of illustrate their points.
In a way, kind of signposting the AMV craze that we had grown up with.
Actually, that was more in line with the actual music videos they did, where they would have these like montages of different clips from their shows set to this awesome soundtrack that they had made for them that eventually got put out on CD. Like they actually released a CD of awesome music that they had used on the show on the block. Those were good. Now, getting back to the movie block, there was one other thing. We talked about the Midnight Run and a couple of the specials they did. The one special that I remember, that Game Fan, thank you for reminding me about this, was they had one night where they aired a whole bunch of music videos. But they were from two very specific artists. Number one was the Gorillaz. They Gorillaz had started blowing up around this time. Their first album had been really popular. So they aired all four of the Gorillaz' first music videos. Clint Eastwood, I got it. 1999. I can't remember the names of all the videos.
But then the more important one was Daft Punk and the entire Discovery album.
They did not show the entire album because I was there that night. They showed the first four music videos, which is actually part of a movie that was made for it.
Interstellar 4.5s.
Interstellar 5555. A very unique oddity in anime movies, but because, like we said, it literally was just the entire album of Discovery with a movie made around it. But it was really good. They showed the first four music videos on Toonami as part of a tease for it. I don't think they actually promoted the movie per se, but they put out the videos, which was really fun.
Those first four would have had to have been One More Time, Aerodynamic, Digital Love, and Harder, Better, Faster, Stronger.
You are absolutely correct. That was the exact order they played them in, because they played it in order because obviously you kind of had to with those.
Because all of the music videos were just those sections from the actual movie.
Yeah.
Interstellar 4.5s, for anybody else who might be wondering, a masterful work of art.
Well, considering it was made by the legend Leiji Matsumoto, I mean,
and combined with the legends Daft Punk. Yes, and unfortunately, when I say legend, I do mean it. Their story has ended.
I know it sucks.
It's unfortunate, but I will give them credit for how committed they were to the bit for that long, because because anytime they were in public, they were in character.
The songs will always live on in our hearts. Never forget that Daft Punk is with you.
Yeah.
But the whole thing about this movie is that the entire story is told through the music. It is told. There's no dialogue whatsoever. It's just the music, what you're watching, and some sound effects here or there. Beyond that,
no, there was actually no sound effects.
Very minimal.
Yeah, and a lot of times I think the sound effects were just something that was already on the album. They just kind of slipped them in. They just kind of added like visuals to those sound effects. But yeah, it was no dialogue, the only sound effects came from the songs themselves. Everything was just tied into the music, and yet it told it like it's a story that you can still follow. Which is really interesting. It's about like this record executive who apparently has been abducting art, like has been creating artists from aliens from other worlds, and in this attempt for like immortality or ultimate power or something like that. It was really fucking weird.
And they showed the first four videos of that on that Toonami block. Yeah, it was magical for me because at that point I had already begun my digital seas exploration. I wasn't a digital pirate. I was a digital corsair. There's a difference.
But yeah, like I had seen, like even before the Toonami thing had happened, I had seen the first two videos. I had seen, One More Time and Aerodynamic already. So then I came across the other two, Digital Love and Harder, Better, Faster, Stronger. And this was before Harder, Better, Faster, Stronger became a household friggin' thing that everyone knew about. Like,
it was exciting for me because I was like, I've seen this and I've listened to this music because I've been listening to Daft Punk forever. Yeah, at least at that point.
But that was that whole era there, and then of course we moved into the Tom 3 era. And of course the other big thing that came out during the Tom 3 era, we mentioned IGPX, but there was another little show that came out in the Toonami block.
Here in Jersey, fighting villains from afar.
Oh, that's fucking us where I'm going.
You gotta fight first gear in your giant robot car.
Negus XLR! That show needs a comeback. That is criminal.
Yeah.
It also
They
had Tea
can't.
Bloom.
And
Sure.
it is very comforting to see that in hindsight and realize even no matter what the era, everyone hates the DMV.
And also,
It never.
It's like, you want to reboot? They can't. Remember a tax write-off.
That does. You think I care about that shit? I want more Mega XLR. God damn it! Don't
exactly.
deny me this.
Yes.
We all
Kier, you've had your moments of geeking out. Let him have his.
Yeah, thank you.
Put your damn head down, black.
But
Right.
after all of this happened in 2003 to 2007, then we hit the dark ages of Toonami's original run,
Where they gave Tom a face.
the Tom 4 era.
Also, or as I kept calling it, Thomas the Anime Engine.
Yeah,
Oh,
You-
God, I can't get that image out of my head now.
yeah. I mean, you take one look. We have Tom 4 on the splash screen there.
Bum 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 bum.
Yeah, they gave Tom 4 a completely radical new look.
Which
That-
is
yeah.
terrible.
Oh, it's one of the worst.
And as
I think
far
it's
as
part
I'm-
of.
as far as I'm aware, there was never any explanation given for this, because even if it was done in comic book form, at the very least, the previous incarnations, there was some explanation given.
Yeah, even with Tom 3, because it was just a slight change and it still looks very much like Tom, nobody really complained about the fact that they didn't explain it. But this radical change demanded an explanation, and they never gave us one. They just did it.
The explanation they gave for Tom 3 was that he fought a space pirate and needed to be rebuilt, and that was it.
This needs a show, don't tell.
This is a case of show wonder what the fuck happened.
Yeah, and they were no longer on the Absolution. They were on this planet. They had introduced the Collides a while back, but now they have two of them that actually talk. One of them voiced by Tom Kenny, which great voice actor, but considering what role he's most famous for, I still have issues.
The other one, voiced by Dave Wittenberg, aka Teddy, for anyone who's played Persona 4.
Yeah, that one doesn't bother me. I like Teddy.
I love
but yeah,
Teddy, but a lot of people seem to find him very annoying, and it makes me sad.
Yeah, but like this era also had some of like the worst shows coming out during this time. Like, yeah, the shows that came out during this, you had Mega Man Star Force, Stormhawks, Bakugan Battle Brawlers, Blue Dragon, Ben 10 Alien Force, on top of everything else that had been coming out at the time.
They also
kind
stopped pulling in so many shows. Like you look at the eras between 2000 and 2006, they would bring in tons of new shows. 2007 and 2008, almost nothing.
I have a theory as to why this ended up happening. And call it crackpot. Claim that I'm putting on my tinfoil hat on this, but this is me trying to put on my detective hat and be as appropriately hard boiled as my first cosplay experience at a con.
The boiled.
So
just for that, I'm putting a giant revolver on my head when we meet, so I can actually be hard boiled.
Here, stay frosty here.
Later.
Here's the thing. And maybe some of you can correct me on this. What year did Adult Swim start premiering late nights?
Adult Swim itself?
Yes.
I think that was like early, because that was early on, because that was like halfway into Toonami's original run. I think that was
It launched in 2001, I want to say.
Yeah, because I remember watching the original Adult Swim
I'm gonna go
back
check.
then. Yeah, I'm checking as well.
Yeah, September 2nd, 2001. That's when
Alright.
it launched.
And obviously that was meant to essentially replace Midnight Run. But as time went on, because I remember in the late 2000s I started seeing this Adult Swim thing with first off they had a very minimalist approach. It was It was the brainchild of William Street, and basically meant as a showcase for their stuff on Sundays. A lot of which I will admit I don't necessarily care for. And my theory is that as we went further into the 2000s, the focus on grabbing anime was more on their end. They were getting the lion's share of the pie, and kind of starting to overtake. Until and granted there was that, and I think for a while it was a case of the show. The identity that Toonami had of those more story driven, those are, for lack of a better term, darker series was starting to be taken up by Adult Swim.
Yeah, because we got Duel Masters and Rave Master, which are a lot lighter in tone than say Yu Yu Hakusho or Rurouni Kenshin.
Yeah. Now, granted, it's not like everything that they got was gold, because they had one series in their early days that for the last 20 years they have been taking pot shots at ever since. That being Pilot Candidate.
Yeah.
Hey, Candidate for Goddess was so good though.
I thought I was the
Wasn't a
only
bad
one that
show,
remembered
honestly.
that.
But it was also Adult Swim. One of its first shows that it aired was the one that blew the ever-loving fuck up.
Yeah.
Because they started Adult Swim with Cowboy Bebop.
Yes.
I distinctly remember that for a few people I knew, Adult Swim was their introduction to two series that were very heavily circulated among the DVD crowds. Cowboy Bebop was one of them, and the other one, which everybody had seen plastered over Suncoast and the like for years up to that point, even getting its own figures by McFarlane Toys, was Trigun. Which,
Yeah.
I will go on record to say that Trigun is that Vash the Stampede is Johnny Young Bosch's best performance. I honestly think that Bosch as a voice actor is undervalued.
He is.
Absolutely. The problem is, I think a lot of people, when they see Johnny Young Bosch, but they see what he looks like, they immediately remember what else he was known for, and that kind of creates a stigma.
I'd say these days the bigger stigma is his association with more shonen characters, and part of the reason I say that is as some of you know, I've been on a bit of a early 2000s kick with the marathons I do as part of my workouts, and not too long ago I did a rewatch of Heat Guy J, and if I ever get to speak with Bosch, I will ask him about that particular anime, because I have to wonder, because there must have been a certain degree of liberation in playing a more antagonistic role. Because when I look at his filmography, he hasn't had many opportunities to do that.
Yeah, but I do think that, because I think Adult Swim's influence, especially after it had blown up, not only with shows like Cowboy Bebop, but also taking some of the shows that had aired on Toonami and started to air them on Adult Swim, like Outlaw Star, The Big O, and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
Probably got Adult Swim so popular because they were able to go uncut with it. It got them a lot more popularity, and that's when Cartoon Network started putting more money there. Plus, they had a lot of original programming that was probably cheaper to make at the time.
Oh, I guarantee you it was cheap as hell to make, because this was also when more and more people were starting to take Flash animation a bit more seriously.
Yeah. So that combination kind of made Cartoon Network say, you know what, this is cheaper for us. Let's just start putting money there. And that led to the inevitable for Toonami back in 2008 when it finally hit its end.
Mm-hmm.
And
2000 September 20, 2008, Anime Weekend Atlanta.
And
Cartoon Network says, hey, yeah, we're canceling Toonami, low ratings, and then that night we get the goodbye from Tom.
And I was on A the night that went down, and that was quite an experience, especially when you're dealing with A, who never has anything nice to say about anything.
I was on A and on M. M was melting down.
And I do remember that's also when you started seeing it wasn't until a few years after that you started seeing certain shows, not certain shows, but certain websites and the like do their own spin to kind of carry the torch. One that I distinctly remember watching off and on over the next few years was Toonami Aftermath.
Yeah, Toonami Aftermath, and I think I think that's still around. Actually, I think they're still going today because they have hold on. But yeah, seeing the final thing, and we actually have the final message that that Steve Bloom as Tom gave. Well, this is the end, beautiful friends. After more than 11 years, this is Toonami's final broadcast. It's been a lot of fun, and I'd like to thank each and every one of you who made this journey with us. Toonami wouldn't have been anything without you. Hopefully, we've left you with some good memories. So, until we meet again, stay gold. And then as he takes off, he takes
Bang.
a little nod to Sis World of Spike Spiegel with a bang.
No, that's not a nod to Spike Spiegel. That's a nod to one of the saddest moments in an anime, because not only is Spike dead at that point, yes, spoilers for an over 20-year-old anime, but that's also the end of the entire anime, and you're just like, my heart.
Yeah.
Why did you do this? Why did you associate the end of Toonami with you breaking my heart with possibly one of the saddest Yoko Kanno songs also ever? Because whenever I hear Bang, Blue starts playing in my head.
Yeah.
I'm not kidding. Blue starts playing in my head.
Can't blame you there.
I was so traumatized.
Is that why you inflict trauma on me every day?
I inflict trauma on everyone, Monk. Everyone must suffer with me.
But the thing that I find funny is, even though it was canceled, the idea of that kind of block kind of wasn't. Now, putting aside the whole thing some of the stuff that happened with Adult Swim, there were a few years where they just had a block simply titled Saturday, with a lot of pixel art that they tried for a few years, and I distinctly remember watching that, and that's how and there were a few shows that were staples for a while that had their run on that. So so despite the claim about ratings, it's the idea of putting an action block on Saturday nights didn't really go away. And eventually that mantle would be taken up with Adult Swim, and you have the MO that you've had for the longest time of Saturday is the anime block for Adult Swim, and Sunday is the William Street block, which I sometimes have on in the background, but I'll be honest, there's a very small handful of William Street cartoons that I actually liked.
Yeah.
I know some people have a soft spot for Aqua Teen Hunger Force. I don't.
Aqua Teen was okay. It was something that you could consume without needing to care about a plot. So if it was something you just wanted to kind of fill in the background with, that's kind of what I used it for.
Yeah, that's pretty much. I just had it on in the background while I was working on various projects. I absolutely despise 12-ounce mouse. I've made no bones about that.
Everybody hated that.
I don't even know what the hell that is.
Exactly the point.
Yeah,
but
I'd say the thing that helped. I'd say the thing that helped explode William Street was Metalocalypse.
Oh yeah, that one carried them for a number of years.
When it comes to Adult Swim, the thing that I will remember them most for is I blame them for helping expand my perception of hip hop.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, because of all the music they tend to play and promote on their channel.
A lot of them were independent artists in the Atlanta area. Phenomena, Good Song, Psyche Origami, and Collective Efforts all came from that area. all those groups are still in some of my playlists to this day.
Yeah.
And it's also the reason why whenever somebody does their sweeping generalizations about hip hop, I'm the first person to call that out.
Yeah. But to bring this back around to Toonami, with that ending message was a lie. Not one that they intended to lie about, but many years later...
I wouldn't even say it's a lie. They even said that that we may meet again.
Mm-hmm.
So
Indeed.
until we meet again.
Which
And
probably
so-
was the best thing they did because, yeah, that ended up happening. Now, ladies and gentlemen, allow me to set the scene. April 1st, 2012.
Mm-hmm.
Every year up until, for several years, every April 1st, Adult Swim would, as their April Fool's gag, play a run-through of the ever so lovable movie, The Room.
That wasn't the only April Fool's joke that they did. That was
their shtick.
Yeah,
that was their shtick for several years.
There was that shtick. There was the shtick where they drew mustaches on everybody while playing the first episode of Witch Hunter Robin, which was.
I have to say that's probably the inspiration for making the telenovela mod for DMC Devil May Cry.
Anyway.
I will neither confirm nor deny that.
Anyway, let me get back to this.
Yeah.
So yeah, for several years though, the shtick was playing The Room. Like that was the thing. Mm-hmm. And on April 1st, 2012, they were setting exactly that. And for a brief second, they started that up again, and nobody paid any mind to it. Then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, the credits of The Room cut away, and we're all of a sudden on the Absolution again. With Tom, back in Tom 3 gear, sitting in his chair. And the internet blew the ever-loving fuck up!
So Shades, let me tell you where I was at that time. I was living in an apartment with some of my friends. I had free internet cable. We liked riffing The Room as much as everybody else. We were actually paying attention because we always riffed the same things, kind of like call-out lines from Rocky Horror Picture Show.
That's the exact analogy that I made because I've gone to midnight screenings of The Room, and that's exactly what it feels like.
Exactly. And so when the Absolution popped up, a good friend of mine who looked at it, he's like, "What's this?" I was the first person freaking out. I was like, "No!" He's like, "What?" I'm like, "Look!" I literally just look. He's like, "What?" I'm like, "Wait for the robot, asshole." He's like, "The robot." When he couldn't finish the word robot. All of my friends, all 5 of us, turn to the screen, and there's Tom, and we're like, "Fuck!"
Now, at this point, I had already been starting to do my internet thing. The Shades had already become a thing. I was doing so I'm just cruising around on social media at the time, and all of a sudden, because I don't watch Adult Swim. It's not my thing. I didn't think nothing of it. All of a sudden, I see, I'm like, wait. All of a sudden, I see Toonami blowing up on Twitter. I'm like, wait, what?
Tag bring back Toonami.
Yeah, hashtag bring. So I flip over, and I'm like, son of a bitch! So yeah. They cut back Toonami. They aired the already planned episode of Bleach that they had today, and then they showed a block of DBZ, the DBZ movies, Gundam Wing, Tenchi Muyo, Outlaw Star, Big O, Yu Yu Hakusho, Blue Sub 6, Trigun, and then stuff like Astro Boy and Gigantor. Now, this is where Adult Swim got clever, because the next day, Adult Swim posts on their Twitter page saying, "You want it back? Let us know. Hashtag bring back Toonami," as Xana brought up a minute ago.
And I do remember that that Steve Bloom also followed up on this by posting up a minute-long video talking about that.
Yeah.
Because I think he was of the mindset that everybody else was of wanting this kind of thing back.
He didn't just do that. He led the fucking charge on that. I was there.
I remember that.
He led the charge. And sure enough, with him leading the charge, the internet responded in kind, and it was inevitable that this was going to happen. So sure enough, that May 20, after confirming this on May 16th, when Adult Swim saying, "Yeah, you win, we hear you," May 26th. May 26th, Toonami returns with an initial lineup of with their new initial lineup, and they had some interesting choices for their first run, because they didn't go for like the obvious stuff. Like, they didn't have too many of the obvious shows. They started out rather small with shows like Dead Man Wonderland and Concerned Sins.
Dead Man Wonderland is an unfortunately poor adaptation of the Dead Man Wonderland manga, but still a fun and enjoyable anime to watch if you ignore the source material.
I was just about to say that, Zena.
When it comes to that one, I have to cut it a small bit of slack because of the on again off again delays. It's not as bad as certain other heavily delayed manga. Berserk. Sorry, I had something in my throat.
Kentaro Miura, I swear to God, if you play any more Idolmaster games, I'm going to come to your house, break every console you own, and keep them broken until you finish this fucking manga. I'll do it. I'll get a ticket to fucking Japan right now.
Anyway,
the one that I will admit I was glad to see more people get a chance to look at what of that opening block was Casshern Sins, because at that time I think I had already finished watching the fan sub of it. And
Casshern Sins is good.
Apparently some of the people who grew up with the original didn't take too kindly to it, because it is a radically different.
It's super different. Yep.
Yeah.
No. In fact, side story about that. My introduction to Casshern was.
It was the live action, wasn't it?
No, 1994. Sci-Fi had their anime movie night blocks. I started seeing the opening to Kashan, Robot Hunter, and immediately stuck a blank VHS in our VCR to record that shit. I played that VHS till it was dead in the year 2003.
I will note as a historian, Casshern did serve as one of the major inspirations for a little recurring platform you may have heard of called Mega Man.
Yep.
Yeah, I can see it.
I think Capcom outright admitted that was one of the big inspirations. And
Tatsunoko's works were really inspirational.
That's how I got to know Casshern. I learned it from playing games like Tatsunoko vs. Capcom.
Yeah, but the thing is with Casshern Sins, I've described as a beautiful tragedy, especially since all of the backgrounds in that anime were hand painted.
Yeah.
Which is not something that you in that around that time we started to see a lot of studios doing works that were kind of meant to be throwbacks to 70s style animation work. Because around that time, we also had Akagi and Kaiji, which their particular drawing style is 70s as fuck.
Yeah.
But
now,
I would actually argue that bringing in those particular series was as Toonami as a move as you could get. Because the theme that we've had up until this point is that. During its best years, it was bringing in shows that may be considered niche, but exposing them to a much larger audience.
Yeah, no, I agree with that.
Outlaw Star, some of the Gundam spin-offs, Zoid's Chaotic Century was definitely more niche than New Century. Dot Hack Sign, Samurai X, and Yu Yu Hakusho were more niche in the U.S. Although Yu Yu Hakusho was way popular in Japan.
Yeah.
But another to go along with Shade's point about bringing in niche anime and how Kashern Sins was a perfect choice. We then see it go beyond to other really good niche anime, such as Git's Standalone Complex.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Though I'd argue that for anime fans, that was them reaching out to the hardcore fans because during this era there were a lot of popular shows that they added in. You know, you had your Naruto, you had Cowboy Bebop, you had Bleach going on during this time,
A rerun of Inuyasha,
and a rerun of Inuyasha before the final season started airing. But Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood came out as well during this time. But then they also dabbled. They also took a little nod to their old days of non-anime shows because they had stuff like the 2011 reboot of Thundercats and Symbiotic Titan coming out during this time.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, but Thundercats and Symbiotic Titan are both very anime. I mean, they're not
very anime inspired, absolutely. But
Yeah.
you get my point, though.
Yeah. Another thing though that I saw about them reaching out, the point about reaching out to the hardcore. By 2012, the fan subbing of Japanese anime was in full swing. Like that is when the swell hit its peak, in my opinion. And so a lot of these anime were already seen by the hardcores in a subbed format, but there are plenty of hardcores who also like to watch the dubs.
Mm-hmm.
And then either they compare the two or they just enjoy the two for what they are, whatever it may be. They want to see both.
Mm-hmm.
And this was that opportunity to see both.
Yeah, now we could go over a lot of what was airing, what has been airing on Toonami since its revival, but honestly, aside from a few specific mentions we're going to be naming along the way, really, this was just bringing back Toonami and putting in whatever they can get their hands on these days. Because, my God, they have grabbed a lot of good shit since they came back, and to go over all of the anime they've been airing since 2012 would be a nightmare.
Yeah, which is why I've elected not to bring in that angle. But with this comeback does come the fact that while they didn't try and do the full format, they did start bringing back events in one form or another.
They did when they first started coming back in 2012. They immediately made sure to make the hardcore Toonami faithful feel that this was Toonami.
Mm-hmm.
They brought back the inspirational videos here and there. They brought back some of the musical montages they had done. They had started doing those again. But then eventually, they realized you kind of had to give us another reminder of why this is Toonami. And they decided, let's see, they first of all, before they had even done that, they made a change to Tom. And this is when we finally get to the current era of Tom, with Tom 5. Though Tom, you mentioned Tom 6, but Tom 6 is just Tom 5 with like a little bit of wear and tear. That's all it really is. But Tom 5 aired in about 2013, and this is one of the few anime we can mention that they honestly did have. You have to make special mention of, because this is when they actually got the chance to premiere, not just in America but across the world. We got the exclusive premiere of Space Dandy,
and then in 2016, we had one of the most moving music video premieres, which was Porter Robinson and Maddion with Shelter.
Mm-hmm.
That entire... I'm going to tell you right now, Monk, if you did not feel something tug at where your heart used to be, you're soulless when you watch that music video.
Look, just because I'm Irish doesn't mean I'm full ginger.
Yeah.
Facts.
Then
I would make a joke about Black Irish, but that's beneath me.
Yeah. Now, we also, before that happened, we have to come back to, let's see. November 7th, 2013, or no, 2015, was when we finally saw the return of the Ties, our first total immersion event, with a callback to the original, The Intruder 2, with even a little bit of a return with Sonny Strait reprising his role as Tom 1.
Yep.
Which I thought was a nice touch.
Mm-hmm.
And a couple other big things happened not too long afterwards. Again, we had the adults. We had the finale of Samurai Jack being aired.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So that was good. And then, not long after that, we had a second tie with Countdown.
You forgot about the Intruder 3.
Oh no, that comes later.
Intruder 3 was in. You mentioned Intruder 2, but then you jumped straight to Countdown.
Oh yeah. You're right. Intruder 3 was in 2016, and that's when they really changed things up because they crash landed on an alien planet.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
And then a fifth tie, Countdown, where they got back into space, and all of a sudden, we got a little bit of timeline jumping there. Oh god, that was a mess.
Woo.
But then, March 20th, 2018, Toonami drops the bombshell. As they had teamed up, Adult Swim and Production IG had teamed up to bring back a show that, honestly, I don't know if any of us ever asked for a new season of this, but we got it. 2 new series of Fooly Cooly.
Oh yes.
I have with these 2 new series is that it doesn't feel the same because it's not Gainax.
Well, yeah, but there's a whole bunch of
Look,
mess behind
we've
that.
in previous installments of Monastery Live, we've talked at length about the dirty laundry with Gainax.
I know.
Yeah, but the big thing about this was that not too long after that, like a month later after this announcement was made, April Fool's Day, once again, Toonami gets creative because
I remember this.
Yeah, I was here for this.
I remember this shit. This is hilarious.
They decided that instead of doing their normal run, excuse me, all of the anime they aired that night was subbed. They all in Japanese, and as a nice little twist, they aired the first episode of Fully Cooley Alternative in Japanese with English subtitles.
Mm-hmm.
Not to
And
mention,
of course,
our illustrious hosts were voiced by Masa Kanome and Fusako Shiotani.
indeed.
Mm-hmm.
Yep, everything was in Japanese. The hosts, Tom and Sarah were in Japanese. The shows were subbed. And then, as a nice little bit of just, oh god, what the hell, and this little Monk's laughing his ass off.
Yeah, I know what you're about to say.
They capped off the night with an airing of Masaki Yuasa's first big production, Mind Game. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Mindfuck Central.
If the title wasn't a clue, the poster would confuse you even worse.
Yes.
And
I will state for the record that the sanest thing that happens in that movie is a man literally outrunning God.
And funny enough, and this is perfect timing for me because my last the most recent episode of Anime Takeover I just put out this last Friday features one of Masaki Yuasa's works.
Mm-hmm.
And yes, I definitely mentioned Mind Game.
Because
Mind Game is hilarious.
Whenever I find out that Masaki Yuasa is involved in a project, I end up being intrigued and terrified because
The monk can be scared? What?
Because this is a guy. I know a lot of people have made the jokes about anime can get weird. Especially if they end up having the misfortune of being friends with me and having cat soup inflicted on them. If you watch Cat Soup, just a heads up, stay away from any drugs or alcohol before and afterwards, because.
And for any anime casuals out there who may be thinking that this is a mindfuck like Paranoia Agent or even Furikuri, some people think is a mindfuck. No, No,
No.
both Cat Soup and Mind Game are well beyond that realm.
I remember-
well
Yeah.
beyond.
I remember, and I think it was Anime Insider had remarked that Cat Soup was. I think the words that they used were Hello Kitty on acid. That is an understatement. And I don't even take drugs. I have made the joke for years that I don't need to take drugs because I have had to watch way too much weird shit when it comes to animation over the course of my life that I don't need it. For fuck's sake, I have sat through Face of a Frog. Well, that and I
Yeah.
sat through Return to Oz, which was not something I should have been seeing when I was 12.
Yeah.
Hang. But the thing is, when it came to this particular era, it's definitely a very interesting definitely an interesting rise. And hold on one moment. Keep talking.
Yeah. Toonami at this point has become a thing, a mainstay for anime fans. Like, no matter what shows are airing, no matter what the block is, it is almost a guarantee. Even today, as we come into 2021 and go in full swing, you will still see Toonami trending on Twitter every Saturday night after midnight.
Not to mention the fact that Toonami, as an Adult Swim property, has only been expanding. They've been cutting normal Cartoon Network stuff, such as, for example, reruns of Family Guy from the Adult Swim block, and expanding the Toonami block.
Kind of, sort of. The schedule for Toonami has been all over the place in the last few years.
Yeah.
That's true.
Mhm.
They tend to shrink and grow the block as long as they have properties.
Yeah.
But they don't do what they did near the end of the first run, which is to just stop bringing things in. For example, one of the newer, almost the newest announcement was that with Attack on Titan airing, Toonami was re-expanded to a 4-hour block.
Mm-hmm.
And the best part to me about Toonami coming back, yeah, most of the anime on Toonami are going to be, at this point, fairly common names. Sword Art Online Alicization, War of the Underworld, Shokugeki no Soma, JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. These are all very common names in current age. But it took Toonami fighting and clawing its way up from not only being canceled, but just clawing from a standpoint of ignorance back in the early 2000s to now to make all of these household names. The expansion of anime in the US, I'm going to say, couldn't have happened without Toonami. It absolutely could not have happened.
And
no, absolutely.
I do have to put a bit of an aside, given that whole expansion of anime, and give a bit of a story when it comes to the tabletop scene in the 2000s.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I kind of hinted at this when I talked about Big Eyes Small Mouth 4th edition, and that was specifically the reason why I asked Shades for the cameo. Although the unfortunate part of that is there were a few comments in that video where some people want me to stat Common Writer double using Bezim, and I'm not doing it. because you had the double driver on your avatar at the time. But something to note with that is it's funny looking at how the tabletop scene treated anime in the 2000s compared to now. Nowadays, the idea of taking manga influences is commonplace. there are still the old grognards who think that it's not true tabletop if you're not taking notes from the same sources that everybody was taking notes from in the 70s. But as you all know, I've spent the last 20 years pissing those kind of people off, so fuck them.
Grogs are gonna grog.
Yeah. But in those early years, and some of you probably saw a similar form of this. There was a time where the idea of taking notes from anime for some sort of fan work or professional work was almost ghettoized, for lack of a better term.
There is a reason that people who made anime fan fiction in my high school were heavy outcasts. There's a reason that was all the thing in the early 2000s. That creating anime fan work, not just from a tabletop perspective, not just from a video game perspective, but from all perspectives. It was a nerdism within a nerdism. You would be outcast from other nerd groups.
Now, the funny thing about that is they stopped. I think some groups where I was in growing up stopped doing the whole outcasting thing because they were like, we got to stop doing this. We're just giving this Mildred guy way too many friends. It's like, everybody keep kicking them out. You're just feeding the beast of my ego.
Keep kicking them out. We'll take the recruits. Eventually, the world will be ours.
Yeah. And given some of the stunts that I pulled around that time with help, including completely ruining 3 proms in the same week, I think the message eventually got clear. And yes, I did. Yes, I will freely admit that my plan to ruin several proms in that succession was inspired by Ocean's 11. I will not deny that for one bit, because first off, that's a fucking good movie. But the other thing is when it came to that ghettoization, the reason I bring I think one of the big examples of this sort of approach is the long, endless, and in my opinion, fucking retarded debates about whether or not certain Western shows that were heavily influenced by anime and manga counted as anime, or if they counted as cartoons. My assertion from day one is that they all counted under animation, and trying to ghettoize the two was ultimately pointless. And I remember this debate happening regarding Avatar, and I said that you're going to see in the next few decades, you're going to see the line between the two thin and thin more, as a whole generation of creatives who grew up with anime have that as an influence in their professional work.
Now,
I think
go ahead.
I think history has borne me out as right in that regard.
That's an understatement.
Partially. I would like to make a small counterpoint. As much as I hate the shitbag, Jeff Fu sometimes makes points that are actually good. And in his video, Avatar is an anime, fuck you, fight me, he makes the correct observation that anime is no longer just about an art style or just about the area where an anime comes from, but that anime itself is all at once a cultural movement and a social aspect, as well as being the actual art of creating the animation.
Mm-hmm.
He compared it to French art films. How you could see French art films that weren't actually made in France. They were made in Canada or the US or anywhere else in the world, but they were called French art films because they came from that the aspect of that culture, that social lens.
Let me raise you one when it comes to that.
Okay.
I will bring up the spaghetti western.
I love the spaghetti western. So
I'd say a good amount of spaghetti. First off, the reason it's even called that is because a lot of the directors were Italian,
Italian. Yep.
and second off, even though they're meant to take place in the United States, unless I'm mistaken, a lot of those spaghetti westerns from that particular wave were filmed in Mexico.
I think so.
For obvious reasons, it was going to be cheaper to do things there, and you didn't have to worry too much about permits. Especially since this was during the glory days of grindhouse cinema, where everybody was trying to be as cheap as humanly possible. A lot of blaxploitation films in that had to. The reason some of them had to do bad sex scenes in them is because of the fact that in order to be cheap, they were hiring porn actresses, and if they didn't put those scenes in, then other unions would start to get nervous. But the social move, I'd say, in that regard, something like Toonami was instrumental in exposing that concept of social movement.
Yes.
Much in the same way that a generation before that, something like a show like Star Trek was instrumental in bringing the concept of science fiction as a social movement into a wider audience. And of course helping kind of spur on the idea of a fan convention scene. And incidentally, that's one of the other things that I want to pursue as a pseudo journalist is the early days of both of those scenes. You know, trying to get a feel for the early days of the idea of fan conventions.
Mm-hmm.
But when it comes to, I would say that the one thing that I don't want to see happen when it comes to Toonami is for it to become I don't want to see it become an arm of Funimation, because obviously we've seen the news and we've seen how we've all had our concerns about whether or not Funimation is going to end up having too much of the lion's share of libraries, and that's also the reason why I've argued even harder than I used to that people need to, if they have the opportunity to, invest in the efforts from companies like Discotek Media and Sentai Filmworks, because I don't want to see them get swallowed up as well.
Correct.
And at the same time, I've seen a lot of people argue that in the age of streaming, that something like Toonami doesn't need to be around. I will contest this. And the reason I'll contest this is that if you're looking at a show like Toonami, if you're looking at a block like Toonami as just a means of showcasing anime, then fine, you've got a point. But I feel like doing that is a misdiagnosis, because a narrative that we've been kind of establishing all throughout the years that it's been through its ups and downs is that it became more than just a specialized block. It established its own identity, its own universe, and the fact that it's as much of a presence as it is a medium. A lot of the streaming and that's something that none of the current streaming services have the option to even do. That's something that you can only really do in television, and that's, oddly enough, I think that's also the reason why something similar like the Anime Network didn't last. Well, the other reason it wasn't able to last is simply because it was during that whole on-demand thing, and not a whole lot of people could get it.
Yeah, I know that for a fact.
if you want to see an instance of what happens when you're just a medium on something instead of establishing enough of an identity, I refer you to G4. Now, yes, G4 is coming back, but the issue was what G4 was doing. There were way too many sites that were doing that better when it came to being a means to explore video games. Plus, there's the fact that that they were casting way too wide of a net and they didn't have enough bait on the hooks. Yes, it's another fishing reference, so you know how it is. But that's why I do think that being essentially the Saturday arm of the Adult Swim block is going to give it some degree of security in the years to come. And I know that when there was that cringy political blurb that was put in, you'll notice that that only aired like once, and then they never talked about it again.
Yeah.
They actually do listen to the people that are watching.
Yeah.
I mean, after all, the fact that Adult Swim even brought back Toonami in the first place, there were bumpers on April 8th that said, we're listening and we're looking into it with the whole Bring Back Toonami thing. Mm-hmm. Adult Swim does actually listen to the people. And
let's not forget that there were a couple instances during Adult Swim's black and white era that really kind of showed how they had a bit more of a renegade attitude compared to the rest of the network that they were on, and that involves certain episodes that for a handful of anime that were really pushing the line, and they would put out a 5-second blurb saying, This is gonna get dark, but we're playing the episode uncut anyways because we are American cowboys.
Mm-hmm.
One of them
was
the infamous T-shirt episode of Standalone Complex. Which was which there are certainly better episodes of Standalone Complex at that time. But I appreciated the fact that they could have decided to just not air that episode, and I think everybody would have understood why. But I respect that they did it anyways.
I think another big factor as to why Toonami is still as popular as it is why it's still as good. Goes to the fact that it's very clear that the people running it, including guys like Steve Bloom and Dana Swanson, have a genuine love and passion for working on it.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's not just, people want it, so we're going to give it to them. It's, no, we want this back, and we can see that you guys want it back, so we want to give it to you.
Yeah. And the thing is, when something that's been made very, very clear with how a lot of other television has lost ground is the having if you can spike it so that you've got a million people watching you once every few weeks, that's nice, but that's not sustainable. But if you can get half of that who will watch every single week, that is going to be far better in the long run. Because once you lose the hardcores, it's gone. And I think the fact that that on your own with your own server shades that you've turned the Toonami streams into a social event with everybody speaks volumes of that impact.
I'm willing to bet we're not the only ones who do that. There's probably a lot of people out there who use Toonami as a way to just come together. Even if they've already seen the show, they come together, they talk about it, they have fun, they share memories and stuff like that, and just turn it into a gathering event.
Oh, we already see that with social media with certain voice actors shit posting the whole thing.
Hi, Sarah Roach. How you doing?
I get the feeling that if Sarah Roach visited the temple, it would be both beautiful and horrifying.
But yeah, I think that's another key to Toonami's recent success is they've tapped into that social media market and allowed that just set things up for fans to say, they put out hashtags on their shows and say, hey, here's your hashtag, put it out there, and use it when you're talking about the shows, and of course hashtag Toonami. That's again, it's trending. We said this while you were away for a second, and you heard us come about this every week without fail. Regardless of what there's on their schedule, when Toonami starts airing, that hashtag starts trending like wildfire.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
It is people coming together and talking about it. I imagine if you watch that hashtag on Saturdays, it is blowing the ever-loving fuck up with huge discussions, a lot of threads back and forth, people discussing the shows and giving their feelings on it. And that's what keeps it going. People are talking about these shows. You need that to keep you sustained, especially when a lot of these shows are already on streaming services. Even as these shows are airing, you can go on Funimation's website or Crunchyroll's website and watch them in their entirety right now.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have to wait for Toonami to air it. But we do it. We go on. We watch it on Toonami because we know we're not the only ones watching. It's the same reason why when streaming sites are airing stuff weekly now and all of a sudden now they're the talk of the town. Well, look at WandaVision. Every week when the episodes were coming out, people were going on social media and talking about it. That's the key.
It's the
Make
same.
it a conversation piece.
This is also the reason why when Netflix was really starting to blow up, and there was a comment from their CEO at the time that the majority of their subscriber base's watching habit is on binges. I had argued that binges, as nice as they are not sustainable for building an audience. They work perfectly well when it's a service with a big enough library. But if you want to expand that, the best way to expand that is, for lack of a better term, the weekly ritual. It's funny you mentioned WandaVision, given I had some thoughts on that, but that's a whole other topic. I would compare that whole social gathering / social event thing to a couple of things. One, from my own past, in the sense that in my particular social group back in the day, I was the only one who had reliable cable, but I had one of those TV / VCR combos, and I knew how to work blank tapes.
Yeah.
So
On the tape trade economy.
I effectively started my own tape trade economy in my area. And of course when some of them started when the school that I was at started an anime club, I had started as just one lowly guy, but within about 3 weeks I ended up leading the thing, and I didn't even ask for the position.
I've been there.
I would say with this entire point about how to build an audience, and how it needs to be a social gathering. We've been seeing this phenomenon far longer than the internet age with cult classics such as Rocky Horror Picture Show, or more modern such as Repo the Genetic Opera and The Room. This idea
look at the fact that how many films have we seen over the years that got a second chance on VHS that completely bombed in theaters?
Exactly.
And of course, there's the fact that there are certain films that became cult classics because they were exclusive to certain rental places, like say Boondock Saints. But the other part of
Boondock Saints.
Seriously, you watch that movie religiously.
Get it?
But but the other another corollary that I want to bring to this when it comes to the whole social gathering is
Bitches
more
love cannons.
more often than not, people when it comes to say sporting events, people will go to say sports bars or they'll go to somebody's house. There's the Sunday ritual with millions of homes across the United States when it comes to this. Wouldn't be surprised if there's the same thing when it comes to hockey nights up in Canada. And
Same thing when it comes to hockey nights in the U.S.
I just wanted to make a note to the fact that to the fact that Sportsnet has the show Hockey Night in Canada.
Hockey night in America's hat.
But there's also the fact that when it comes to pay-per-views, like how and riddle me this, what's more likely to happen? One person buying a pay-per-view just for himself, or one person buying a pay-per-view and then bringing a dozen people over?
One person buying a pay-per-view and bringing all the boys over with beers and food.
I know
Hell,
that
I can attest to this because instead of actually ordering the pay-per-view myself, we found some of the hot spots where like local like wing places that actually would air the pay-per-view, and we just go watch it there and just hang out with everybody at the bar.
There was a bar around here where they had every Saturday or Sunday night, if there was a good fight going on, they would just get the pay-per-view and put it on a big screen. They'd cut off half the restaurant. $5 admission.
Probably because, and it was honestly a cheaper option, especially when it comes to say a boxing pay-per-view. Because have you seen how much it costs for that?
Oh, dude, the thing is, they would do all of those. They got enough people that it actually became viable. Where it's like, well, I get a free beer to start. It's only $5 admission. Yeah, it worked, and a lot of people came to watch.
As opposed to paying like $40 or $60 for the pay-per-view in your house.
Exactly, and again, they'd have maybe like 100 people that'd show up just to watch one match. It fits to your point. One guy pays for this, and everybody else provides the food and drink.
Yeah.
Oh my God, communism actually works in some instances.
No, you take that back. It's all run by capitalism, you piece of shit. Because everybody's buying something.
I couldn't resist.
The joke was there, low-hanging fruit.
I know it was low-hanging.
No, that wasn't low-hanging. That was rotting on the ground.
And alcoholic. So, drink.
That
answers that question right there.
Yeah. That figures for him.
Oh, of course it does.
Oh, yeah. But when it comes, I know there's the argument that streaming is going to have a bigger footprint with time. But the thing is, and this is something that I feel really needs to be driven home. No matter how big streaming gets, it will always be looked at as a service. You'll not be able to do something like Toonami, or its equivalent. You could not do that on any streaming service. Simply because of the fact that aside from certain setups where you could hook up your computer to a sufficient sized television, you wouldn't be able to have that. If it's just an on-demand streaming service, you wouldn't be able to have that social gathering because and this is and I'd actually say this is a case where for a lot of people, having access to anime streams ends up restricting their exploration rather than expanding it. Largely because with a lot of the stuff that aired on it, it's can fall on Toonami. It's a case of these are things people didn't even know that they wanted.
Yeah, that's the thing about streaming services is that you have the problem of too much choice. You have so much anime available to you on just Funimation alone, just Funimation alone, not to mention other services, that you get overwhelmed with all the choices, and you just end up going to your favorites.
Or the comfortable stuff.
Yeah, you just go with what's comfortable. Toonami, because it is a locked schedule, you don't get to decide what airs on their block. You are forced to watch whatever they put up there. And sure, you run the risk of them occasionally airing a show that you don't care for. And on the very rare occasion, a dud in and of itself, I'm sorry, I do not like SAO. I think we've made that abundantly clear. And quite frankly, that show, I don't know why that show's as popular as it is, but that's just me.
See, that's why you and I can be friends, Shades, because of the fact that we both have a distinct hatred for Reki Kawahara and his show.
And
We've been over that. We've been over this.
SAO is popular?
One, we've been over our roasting of SAO. Two, bit of a spoiler warning. It may not happen in the next few months, but Reiki Kawahara, in the words of the monster of among men, we're not finished with you.
That being said, at the same time as all that, more often than not, you will get exposed to anime that you will find out to be your absolute favorites.
Candidate for Goddess.
Hey, I got nothing against that show, but I'm looking at the current the post revival Toonami lineup.
Mm-hmm.
For me, there are shows that I didn't care for. I don't care for Black Clover. Never have, never will.
I'm not big on it either.
Yeah.
Insert screaming here.
But, I finally got the chance to see Paranoia Agent. I'd heard of it. I knew of it. Never got a chance to watch it. Great. Now I love it. Another favorite of mine. Megalobox. Probably would have never watched that show on my own. Great series.
Do you know the reason I watched it, Shades? Because it was specifically aired as using older techniques and made to look like 90s anime by adding in things like film grain and such.
Yeah, no, I'd heard a lot about it, and I heard it was really good, but I would have never taken the time to watch it on my own. So when it aired on Toonami, I was all for watching it, and I'm glad I did.
So good.
I'll side with Shades on this one. If it wasn't for Toonami, I probably never would have watched Casheron Sens or Foley Coley, despite how many people recommended it to me.
Yeah, same. So yeah, and that's one of the another key to Toonami's success is that they've mixed up the big ones with there may be more popular anime out on their block now, but they still occasionally throw in those curveballs like. They just recently aired Assassination Classroom.
Mm-hmm. I love
it. That's a good show.
Great show. Not even going to argue that for a minute. But
with tentacles all along.
But unless you knew about it, would you have ever considered watching it unless it aired on Toonami?
Absolutely. Well, that's one of the ones I ran across by accident. But if that was not the case, no. There's no way I would have looked at that show and taken it seriously, let alone watched it.
Yeah.
I guess I'm a weirdo amongst weirdos then, because what I tend to do is research my anime before I watch them to decide whether I'm going to watch them.
You know what? And there's nothing wrong with that. That's no shame, no blame there. But that's not the average person. I'm looking at this from a casual's perspective. Mm-hmm. Hell, it's one of the reasons why I do the anime watch parties over on my server. It exposes me to anime I would have never fucking watched before. Hell, we just recently watched the remake of Bem, the 2019 remake of Bem.
Nice.
I had never considered watching that show, and it's really fucking good.
Mm-hmm.
Bem is awesome.
Yeah.
That's kind of how I feel about the whole Scientific and Index series. Never would have watched it. Never would have watched it. And
I think, and I can see, like I said, I'm the outlier here in all this. I realize that. I can definitely see how this adds a gateway to even people who like you, Shades, who is a hardcore. You definitely are a hardcore. As well as to the casuals that are out there. Again, I'm just the weirdo who reads all the light novels and watches and looks at the wikis before choosing an anime to watch.
I wouldn't even go so far as to say I'm like, I think I'm on one layer of hardcore, whereas I've watched a lot of stuff that nobody's ever heard of, and I'm proud of that fact.
Yeah.
But I'm not a full on, just all in hardcore fan. I don't go into everything. I can't keep up with the seasonal anime. I don't watch everything that comes out. I look at what's popular. I look at what's good, what seems to be well praised, and even then, nowadays with the watch parties, I watch whatever comes up. And
can't wait until Quintessential Quintuplets gets on there somehow.
Oh God, that's never gonna happen. Oh, well,
I want it
possible.
Not just on the watch party. I want to see it go to something on Cartoon Network.
Yeah, don't hold your breath on that. I'll just straight up say that right now. Though this also does mean that I occasionally come across some duds. I actually, a little bit of a side here, and I'll make this brief. Mm-hmm. Yesterday, we actually tried to watch an anime that I had to give up after 3 episodes because it was just so fucking cringy. Anyone know of Heaven's Lost Property?
No, I have stricken that from memory, and because you just brought it up, that's going to have to be a drink because I have a few brain cells to kill.
It was so cringe that he ended up calling an abandoned ship and running straight for the temple.
Yeah,
I'm gonna put it this way. Heaven's Lost Property. What's that? I don't know what you're talking about.
Fuck you.
Again, killing more brain cells.
I will end this right now. Coops over here is a very cultured gentleman. He can handle some crazy ass shit. After 3 episodes, even he was ready to abandon ship.
Enough was fucking enough.
So that is the risk you always run. To bring this point back around, that is the risk you always run when you're exposed to stuff you never would have considered. Yes, you will occasionally find stuff that you just can't stand. Stuff that you're like, I never want to see this series again as long as I live. Again, hi Bobo, how you doing? Let's not get into that again.
Hi Dokoro-chan, how you doing?
Hey, Dokuro-chan is great. Fuck you.
Let's.
Bokusatsu Tenshi Dokuro-chan.
You guys need to chill. I don't have enough beer to kill this many brain cells.
But
yes, you do.
Now let me put it this way: something I think that I'm going to be feeling the same about after finishing the season, because frankly, I'm pretty sure we're only 2 episodes away, and I can handle that, right? The hidden dungeon only I can enter.
Oh, good lord! Why?
Anyway, let me bring it back on the rails while I can.
Yeah.
Rails.
The point I'm getting at is that having, again, streaming services are great and all, but you need to find a way to restrict yourself, to force yourself to watch something that you'd never consider watching otherwise. And you can do what I do and just put up a randomizer wheel, pick a bunch of titles that fit certain criteria, and then just spin away. But at the end of the day, you need to have other people there with you to do that. And having a social gathering like for a Toonami thing is a great way to do that without even having to pick anything. You can just say, okay, here's the lineup they're giving us. Let's sit down and see what we get. And having that social gathering also allows you to bounce things off each other. We can have those discussions, have these arguments, because now we're being exposed to it, even if we didn't ask for
it. You didn't ask for this, but this is what you're getting.
Well, also, to be fair, we do have to at least briefly acknowledge the 3-episode rule, because if it wasn't for that, I never would have finished Astro Lost in Space, which was a lot stronger of a show than I thought it was going to be.
Yeah.
Well, I'm going to be honest there. I think the 3-episode rule varies from person to person. It's generally called a 3-episode rule, but sometimes for me, 3 episodes isn't enough. I'll be like, okay, so I'm really not liking this, but I keep hearing, and I've read that it's going to be really good, and the source material was better than this. Maybe it's just slower than what I expected. And then it turns out it was. And I had to go to 5 episodes, and then I was like,
Yeah.
okay, now we're in this.
I
That's how,
I have two rules when it comes to watching anime. I have the ratio rule, which is I watch a certain ratio of the anime before I make a call. You know, depending on how big the anime is, I go so many episodes. If it's a simple 12-episode series, yeah, 3 would probably do you good.
Yeah.
But if you're watching like a 24 or 32 or 56 episode series, yeah, you might want to go like 5 to 10, maybe 20 before you start making any calls.
Mm-hmm.
And then I also have what's called the dead stop rule. And that is if a show has to take so many episodes to get to the quote unquote good part, you're done. I don't care how good the show gets afterwards, you're done.
Well, I'll admit that's how originally Kimetsu no Yaiba and Jujutsu Kaisen were for me. Where I got to episode 3 and I was like, yeah, this feels like a typical shonen. I don't see a reason to keep watching it despite all the hype.
And then Jujutsu Kaisen and Kimetsu no Yaiba rip out your heart and go, yeah, you're gonna love us.
Yeah, they both hit everything past episode 10,
Well,
and my tune changed completely.
for that matter, consider someone trying to take a look at Madoka and only seeing the first episode.
Oh, Jesus.
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah.
That's
a
where the
perfect
ratio
example.
rule comes in. Because, yeah, after once you get to episode 3, then you know shit's going down.
For a while,
Okay.
I had a hard and fast three episode rule, but after so many times where I ended up bending or even breaking it, I decided to go with with what I call the death march rule, i.e., I'll go until I feel I can't, and that's it. Plus, as I will admit, it's a bit of a pride thing where I don't like
Leaving things half finished.
No, it is. I'm the kind of guy who is petty enough to call out fans of my own local sports teams for when they walk out of a game before it's finished.
So, in short, you're a victim of the sunken cost fallacy.
Pretty much.
Don't worry, Monk. The sunken cost fallacy combined with my pride is why I am still watching Kakshi Dungeon.
Well, just to give a bit of perspective on this, I remember going to a Vikings game and seeing them get their ass kicked, and I was about to leave, and my boy was like, "No, we paid for these tickets. We're gonna get our fucking money's worth."
He's not wrong. I agree with your friend.
Mm-hmm.
And as a Redskins and Capitals and Saints fan, yeah, been there more times than I care to admit.
Yeah, but
Sounds like it.
the ultimate thing that I want to highlight is the only time I would consider having to break off my relationship with a show like Toonami and with a social gathering like Toonami is if they start going all in on following trends. And fortunately, given how there's the whole thing of them listening to their audience, I don't see that happening and unless a lot of things end up changing. Plus, there's the fact that they would have to get really defensive, because I think they are smart enough to know if they lose. As I mentioned before, you can win and lose casuals any day of the week, but if you lose the hardcores, you're not getting them back.
Yeah.
They'll leave and never return.
Yeah, and
Done it
Toonami
myself.
and just focusing on the casual anime would be a bad idea in and of itself to that regard, because
There's not enough.
There's not enough. But Toonami is already proving even now that they are willing to take chances on lesser stuff. Like they're putting together they are helping to produce an anime based on frickin' Junji Ito's Uzumaki.
Which I know that got delayed because of the coof, but I will be keeping a very close eye on Twitter when that premieres.
That's gonna get interesting.
As somebody who has read I have if you recall, during one of the shows, I think it was shortly after the trailer for the thing premiered, I had remarked on the vast difference between, and I think it was during that I think I had talked about this when we were all watching The Dark Knight Returns. I think it was part 2, and I had mentioned that there is when you compare that, it's an interesting contrast when you compare Junji Ito with Frank Miller, because Ito goes into really, really messed up material in his work, which is the understatement of the millennium. But you look at the way he acts when he's not behind his pen, and he's a complete goof.
I still think Amigara Fault is my favorite short story of his.
Yeah.
That hole, it was made just for me. Yes, that is an out of context clip, and if people use it, it's expected.
Yeah, but you look at Frank Miller and the fact that he never had anything to balance out the dark storytelling that he was doing, plus living in New York in 2001. It was only inevitability that he ended up going crazy.
Frank Miller? Crazy? Never!
Don't even talk to me about that. You didn't have to sit through reading Holy Terror.
I didn't? Excuse me?
I'm just going to go ahead and drink.
Wait, you did?
I will neither confirm nor deny.
Not you, Zan.
Xana, you
Yeah?
actually read that? Oh, you poor bastard.
I read a lot of things.
The only reason I know what's in that book, the only reason I even know of that book and what's in it is thanks to Linkara's video on it. I would never read that piece of shit.
I did because of Linkara's review. I wanted to see if it was as bad as he said.
Masochistic bastard!
No, this is during the time where I also did things like read the Twilight series, because it couldn't be as bad as what everybody was saying, right, guys?
You masochistic bastard!
I had to be sure to form my own opinions. I couldn't be a sheep.
So,
Xana. God damn.
So, Xana, the question: Did it live up to your expectations?
Doku, drink your third liver under the table right now before I come over there and rip it out.
I'll take that as a yes.
I think we struck a nerve.
Your liver out, not your heart. You don't need your heart, but your liver to continue drinking. I will take your life's blood from you.
That struck a nerve.
My job here is done.
Shades.
What do you mean your job here is done? You didn't do anything.
Yet.
Sydney.
Shades. Do you remember how last night there was that gag on Food Wars about the meeting that should never have happened? Sometimes I feel like that's exactly what goes on between Zan and Doku.
Right?
To be fair, just before I forget this, I did want to touch on something that you guys were talking about.
Yeah.
In regards to Toonami listening to their audience, in regards to what shows they're going to put on their platform.
Mm-hmm.
Listening to your audience isn't always a good thing in this particular day and age, because if that was the golden goose of how people choose to determine what they're going to put on their lineup, you never would have seen shows like Shield Hero or Goblin Slayer, which aren't not the best thing in the world, bad, but not the best thing in the world. But
I know where you're going with this, and that's a completely different can of worms. But you are somewhat right on that. It's important to know when not to listen. Simply
Sorry. I'll make this quick.
Mm-hmm.
Basically, there's a difference between listening to your fans and just blindly following whatever you hear them say. You take their advice into account when you make your decisions, but you don't immediately go, "Oh, you want us to do this? Okay, we'll do that."
Yes, correct. And this goes both ways in the sense that, oh, you should put this show on your lineup because it's awesome, and it turns out to be absolute trash, and everybody's telling you, no, it's absolute trash. Don't do this. Or on the flip side of that coin, you should not put this show on your lineup because it's absolute trash. At least look at it first and determine, like, for example, Shield Hero. Shield Hero is a pretty damn good show. Goblin Slayer, on the other hand, not great,
The light
but
novels are both better.
the light novels are better. But it's not as bad as it was made out to be. But does it deserve a spot on your lineup? Probably not. That's my personal opinion. If people love Goblin Slayer, I love Goblin Slayer too. I just don't think it's deserving of a lineup that has a limited time block to it. So that's the point I wanted to make there on that one.
Now, I'd say the thing is that I personally want to see the whole social experience continue on, simply because I think in this age of streaming, a lot of people have, as I mentioned before, have kind of fallen into safe zone areas, and I think that having this allows for people not just to see things that they didn't know they wanted to see, but also hear takes that they may not have heard otherwise. Especially in an age when so much of what we see in our day-to-day lives seems intent on ghettoizing us. And as an excellent case in point, there's the presence of the temple. But I think that is as strong of a coda as any to leave off on this particular thing. Obviously, I'd imagine that we're probably going to see some new model of Tom in the next 5 years. It's almost an inevitability. Although I will say of the events that we've seen since the reboot, the Forge is my personal favorite, if only because we got to see Tom act like a complete dork. It's like, especially with the whole firearms. Yes, Santa, I have been a good boy. But that is going to do it for this particular episode of GeekWatch. Now, as far as what's coming down the pipe this week, unless something major changes, it's not going to be a whole lot in the way of me going through an interview blitz. Which I'm pretty sure some people are thinking, thank God, because hopefully it means I don't work myself to death.
Yeah, you need the rest.
I will say that this Friday, I'll be once again doing another instance of Valley of the Judged, as I'm making that a weekly series. Fortunately, this one will be a little bit more structured. We were kind of all over the place last time because we had way too much material to work with. But with what's coming on Friday, that's not going to be the case. On Saturday, I do have a bit of double duty, but it's not going to be as terrible. One, some of the people from Against the Dark Master will be coming back to do an album crawl experiment, and I have made it clear, much like with the Pick 5 challenge that we did, I specifically asked Max, do not tell me which album we're doing until the day before. So, and we're both going to be bringing forth one album to create a dungeon crawl using the song titles from a given album as our muse. because somebody did this with Demons and Wizards, so I figured why not try it myself. And at 7 p.m. Central, if I'm not mistaken, I will be staging a monastic invasion into Shades' podcast, The Anime Mavericks.
Oh boy.
So that's something to look forward to down the line. And of course, there's going to be plenty of insanity coming along the way in other forms, as there always is. But until then, on behalf of the good brothers present and not present, my name is Mildra. I am your gaming monk, and join the watch.